Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we create and maintain public education advocates. It's the show where we talk about the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics behind public education. As always, I ask that you write your name in the comments when you come in, so let us know that you're here and any thoughts and observations, questions you may have about the topic that's currently being discussed. I'm a longtime teacher, so I do enjoy having active participation in my class. And so you can help with that by asking questions and letting us, respond. So if by chance you're watching this later and you still have questions, please pop them in the comment section and I'll get notified and I'll be able to answer your question or at least give you a reply around your comment. So let's get started. Today we have with us nurse medic Cynthia Ferguson, and she's going to help us know how to prepare our kids this summer for the start of the school year. For some school districts are already closed, but some are still, because of the late start, still going on till the second or third week of June. But there are parents who don't realize that there's some to-dos that need to be done during the summer as far as preparing for the new year. So let's bring Cynthia on. And let's give her a chance, first of all, to talk to us a little bit about this COVID ending. Your district is just about to close in about a week and a half or 2 weeks, but so that you have a good knowledge of, how COVID has impacted this school year. So welcome back to the show, Ms. Ferguson, and talk to us a little bit about the end of the school year.
Well, thank you, Dr. Good, for having me back on. This year, as everybody knows, has been totally different than any other year. Things that we didn't expect happen, and some things that we knew were going to happen didn't happen, vice versa. But this school year coming to an end, it's been different. With us having not so many students on campus, but a lot of them doing online. You still have those that come in. You still have the parents that still send their children with a little headache, with, not feeling too well. And of course, normal headaches are not normal headaches this year. Normal stomach aches are not normal stomach aches. Normal anything is just not normal anymore. So we have to be very cautious and go above and beyond to make sure that our scholars and staff and everybody is safe on campus. Our parents depend on us to make sure that their children are safe in a regular environment. And then with the pandemic going on, they, a lot of them were hesitant about sending their kids. And then, some don't have choices, which we understand because they're essential workers. And having the kids here, we have to go above and beyond. And I can say that Legacy has gone above and beyond everything just to make sure that everybody is safe. So some parents agree with it and like it. Other parents are wondering, why are you sending me home if my child has a little runny nose? It's allergies, it's this or that. But we have to take caution on all sides. So with it coming to the end of the year, whew. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I mute myself because the line quality is better, and then I forget. You have a kindergartner, and who's a little, has some issues, right? Some allergies and so forth. And yet you brought him to school. How did he do?
He did fine. He's asthmatic and he's been hospitalized at least 3 times. He's 5 years old. He's been hospitalized at least 3 times with asthma, severe, in ICU one time. And I was comfortable enough knowing that the policies and procedures that we were doing here at Legacy, I was comfortable enough to bring him in. Of course, I walk around and check, the classes as we all do. We make sure, we do our little touch your nose if the mask is slipping too much. Sometimes we have to verbally remind them, but the staff has been amazing. The policies that were put into place again have been amazing. And I think we've done fairly well here. So I was comfortable bringing him in.
How do you feel about the mask mandate and about us not being able to mandate masks anymore after June 4th?
Wow. It's kind of both ways, because we all knew that this day was going to come. And I think it seems a little premature on one end And then on the other side, it's like, we knew it was going to come. We're going to have to do it, kind of like go into it. I personally will still be wearing my mask. My child will, just out of a comfort level. Sometimes it's, we still don't know a lot about the virus. We don't know if we're going to have, boosters in a year or what, but it seems to be getting better slowly. But as far as the mask mandate, it's always been a personal preference, except when you walk into a building where you had to have it on, or a facility where you had to have it. And I know now schools are not going to be mandated to have it. A lot of places aren't going to be mandated. And then there's still some that are going to be mandated to have it. So it's kind of, half and half. I'm excited to try to get back to some normalcy. And then on the other end, it's, I'm still going to take all my precautions. It's helped do a lot of different things this past year, and seeing the hand washing, the social distancing, and everything like that. So I think just on my end, keep our mask on for a little while longer.
Do you feel like the social distancing, which has now gone to about 3 feet, and the hand washing and sanitizing, that will be in place next year and should be in place next year?
Well, I'm hoping it's in place. I mean, I think it should be in place. These are things that, the social distancing is something that I think we should still keep in mind, just as school will start again. Hand washing, I mean, we should have been doing that all along. I think this just kind of showed us that we need to be more vigilant in doing it, more vigilant in making our students do it, when they walk in, still having the hand sanitizers until we can get to a soap and water. So I'm thinking that should, in my opinion, I think that we should continue with that. Social distancing, of course, I think that is definitely something that has helped curb some of this virus, in addition to some other protocols. But I think it would be a good idea that we could still, kind of monitor and not let a lot of students congregate all together. We could still do circles, just wider apart. We could still have seating, just wider apart like we are now.
And how about the adults? We need to apply some of that to the adults too, don't we?
Oh, yes, because it's easy. I mean, we're human. We're going to come in and, just like the kids after coming back from a summer break, we're excited to see our coworkers. We're excited to talk about our summer breaks or our vacations, or being able to sleep all day, or whatever, somebody chooses to do. And then, of course, meeting new staff that may be coming in. We want to help them and guide them, but we still have to be cautious. And, especially if we're not going to be wearing masks, we still need to be very, very cautious of how close we get to somebody. The same thing, we had our mask on when we were sneezing. We had our mask on if we had a little tickle in our throat. Now we're not. So, we got to keep in mind that if somebody has allergies and they come in sneezing, they don't have a mask on. We go back to the old in your sleeve. And that's, a lot of times the little ones don't remember that or don't realize that. And it's up to us as the educators to remind the scholars, and to remind each other, to remind them.
It needs to be part of our structure, our everyday structure at school, no question about it. Yes. So let me ask you, I'm curious, what are you sensing from parents as far as vaccinating their younger children? The 12 to 15s can be vaccinated. Are you feeling that parents are positive about that, or what are you sensing?
At the school, I haven't heard too much, other than I've heard a few parents that were, before it came out that they were going to do that they could not wait until their child could be vaccinated. I know of a few parents that have already had their children vaccinated in that age range. And I think it's still, people want to do it, but just like us in the beginning, it's like, I'm going to do it, but let me wait and see. I'm going to do it, just let me wait and see. Give me a couple of weeks, give me a month. But I feel pretty confident that by the time school starts, that we're going to have a pretty good amount of students that have had their vaccine. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
So let me then transition to, that's not the only vaccine that parents can give kids. They're actually, by law, supposed to be giving certain vaccines at certain ages, and then we also have physical exams at certain grade levels. So can you talk a little bit about what do parents need to be thinking about this summer to get their kids ready for the beginning of the school year so that they aren't rushing around that last week before school starts doing it?
Yes, yes. Immunizations that are required, they're state mandated through for them to come on campus, especially kinders that are just starting. They have to have all of their updated immunizations. You know, there's a DTaP, there's a varicella, there's the measles, mumps, rubella, there's the polio, hepatitis A, hepatitis B. Those are all have to be current before they enter school. And a lot of times the parents know, hey, my child got their 4-year-old, and then you just forget it's time to go to school. They may need some updated. They may have forgotten. It's easy to forget, you know, when you don't have to provide them on a regular basis. And then from there, when you have your 6th graders going into 7th grade, they have to have their meningitis and they have to have their Tdap booster. Those are required for them to come into the 7th grade. It is, we are not to allow students, it's through the state of Texas, to be on campus if they are not complete or up to date on their immunizations. And as far as physicals, I mean, it's just a good idea that your child, even adults, go on an annual basis to the doctor, get their regular checkup, get their normal physicals. But as far as physicals, I think it's a good idea if you get your child, have their physical this year, especially because you don't know if they decide to play sports or not. You don't know what they're going to want to do. And that's a requirement to have it current to play a sport. You know, that nowadays there's just so many, you know, with things that are going on. You know, we've seen in the news and stuff about students that they didn't know that they had an issue and they fall out on the court or they fall out, you know, on the field. So it's important to have the physical on a regular annual basis, but especially if they're going to participate in sports.
Yeah, my granddaughter just got her physical because she needs it to go into middle school in Kentucky. It's a requirement.
Oh, wow.
Different states have different requirements.
Right. Well, I can see why. And, you know, who knows what's going to happen in Texas. It may be a requirement one day. It may be. And in addition to the immunizations, you know, we do have an exemption here in Texas that if a parent chooses not to, you know, it's called an affidavit exemption of conscience for religious reasons. They have to reach out to the state of Texas. They can go online and order an affidavit and get it notarized and bring it in. Now, that will allow them to be in school, but it also could exclude them if there is a pandemic or if there is an outbreak of something that, you know, measles or something like that. They would be excluded from school, but they do have that choice.
And I believe that's not unusual for states to offer that. It's just that that's up to the parent to apply for it. It's not easily gotten. So
Right.
Now, of course, I'm going to ask you, because summer's coming, what summer safety are you, because I know you're getting a lot of articles and so forth in your profession about summer safety. What do you want to tell parents about how to keep their kids safe this summer?
Well, there's, you know, several different aspects, but with the pandemic still going on, you know, we hear it in the news, we see it in the CDC, we see it all over. You still want to be cautious, whether you've had your vaccine or not. You can still get the virus. It's just not as severe. The percentage of getting it is a lot lower than if you didn't have the vaccine, but you still want to be careful of who you gather with, you know, because it's summertime. They want to go swimming. They want to go on vacation. Make sure that you check ahead to where you're going to find out what their policies are. You know, if you go out of the country, I know sometimes if you go out of the country and you test positive before coming back, you have to quarantine there for 14 days. And guess who foots the bill? You do. That's a lot. That's a big expense. Even though you've had your vaccine and you take your children, they haven't had their vaccine. There's some countries that, it varies. So make sure you check where you're going. When you have get-togethers, family get-togethers, barbecues or whatever, you still got to be very cautious about, who's there. Again, the social distancing, we're outside, so it's a lot better because, being outside is wonderful, and you've got the breeze and you've got the air, and they've kind of lifted those mask mandates outside, but still be cautious. That's with the pandemic. With summer safety in general, swimming, please keep an eye on your children, because drownings, it's sad reality, because it takes just seconds for a child to jump in a pool and go down, and nobody's doing it to them.
I watch another show, the JP Kathy and the Crew, which is part of this podcast network, and they have Dr. Clothier on every Monday, and I've heard him say this every start of summer for the last several years. He said, when parents go out there to watch their kids by the pool, put the phone down. And then if there's two adults, then one of you is assigned to watch the kids while the other one gets to check emails or whatever you think is life-threatening that you got to check. But that you're right about, it just takes that trip to the restroom, looking down and responding to a text in a long way, and your kid's down at the bottom of the pool. And so those are always good reminders. A lot of times people will roll their eyes when they hear things several times, but you know what? It's the only way to keep important information from slipping back to the hard drive in the back of our brains. And so thank you for those reminders. Now, before you leave us, let me talk a little bit about a couple of articles that caught my eye, because I think that you might, you could be a good passer on of the information as well. Because a lot of times, a lot of people don't take advantages of resources that are out there because they frankly didn't know about it. And so the more people that know, the better we can get that word out there. But this particular article has to do with Texas families with students receiving free or reduced price lunches could be eligible up for $1,200 in food aid. So this is federal money. So this would apply not only in Texas, but in other states as well. Almost, I think every state gets federal funding when it comes to the lunches. But it's good for you to know that, so that you can make sure families take advantage of this. But families who relied on the pandemic EBT card, which is like in Texas, they call it the Lone Star card, which previously provided one-time benefits of $285 for students receiving free and reduced price meals, can apply for another round of food aid for the next school year. The federal benefit helps provide for 3.7 million eligible low-income children in Texas who lost access to free and reduced meals when school first shut down during the pandemic. This time, the benefit could provide up to $1,200 per student, depending on the number of days most students at their school received remote instruction during the past school year. And this is important. Families who received the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, which is SNAP, as some people know it by, before 2021 will automatically receive benefits on their EBT card by May 28th. So that's just around the corner, or just here. Those who started relying on SNAP after May 2021 and have children born before August 1st, 2014 will need to apply. So the EBT card can be used at all places that accept SNAP, including grocery stores and supermarkets. The school districts will notify eligible families with the application by June 2nd, and applications will remain open until August 13th. The process is more complex this year because of the amount of money allocated. Will depend on the days the school had remote instruction. Okay, this is important. Rachel Cooper, a senior policy analyst for Every Texan, said that families may need to go through an extra process if their children attended school remotely while their district still had in-person instruction, and this could be a barrier to access. That's what we're all worried about, and that's why we're trying to educate families as well, said Cooper. We'll be working really hard with our nonprofit partners across the state, food banks, and others to get information to families and help them if they need to understand that, yes, your child was virtual, and more than if the amount your school qualifies for, if you go online and appeal. So you can already tell it's going to be a little bit more complicated, right? Because that virtual piece in there. And some low-income families live in multi-generational households, which motivate many children to learn remotely when possible to avoid spreading COVID to their older relatives, right? And so we knew that was happening. We knew that many, especially our Hispanic families, they tend to let mom and dad finish their days with them. And but they're the most fragile members of the household, right? And so the parents of the school kids chose to keep the school kids home. So because of the virtual aspect of this process, they may need to go through this additional process to qualify. And of course, they may be disproportionately people of color and disappropriately affected by COVID at a more extreme rate than the higher income households. So that's good for you to know that. Make sure your counselors know that there's up to $1,200 per student that will be coming, if in some cases already coming May 28th, but they may need to apply if it didn't come. That's number one. Number two is, this is exciting too, Department of Education launches outreach campaign to millions of K-12 students and federal Pell Grant recipients now eligible for monthly discounts on broadband internet service. So, and I'll put the link in the comment section for people to know it's coming. But the FCC's Emergency Broadband Benefit Program is a temporary program that provides a monthly discount up to $50 per month on broadband service and associated equipment, a modem, for example, for eligible households, up to $75 a month for households qualifying on tribal lands. Each participating household may also receive a one-time discount of $100 for one connected device, a laptop, tablet, a desktop, etc., were available from participating broadband companies, as long as the household contributes between $10 and $50 towards the cost of the device. Now, also, let's see, so eligible students are the K-12 students and eligible Pell Grant recipients. Pell Grant recipients tend to be those undergraduates who receive a grant to go to college, and they come from poverty backgrounds, and so they are also eligible. Now, this is huge. This can really save money, because what the FCC is saying is that this is no longer a nice to have thing. Internet is not nice to have. It is a need in every household. It is. And so now they're meeting that need, but you have to apply. And like I said, I'll put the links in the comment section. But people like you, counselors, school principals, the IT folks, everybody needs to be aware of the resources that we have available for our kids from poverty, so that families don't have to stumble on the information. They can get it easily and freely from their school, because if it wasn't communicated one way, it was communicated another. And you and I both know that as much as we communicate in our districts, in our schools, that we still have parents who said they didn't know.
Yes.
And so just like I recruit public ed advocates to make sure that our legislators look out for us when it's, the legislative session is going on, we've got to make sure that all our campus personnel knows of the resources that are available from the federal government and sometimes the state governments to our neediest students. So I have empowered you. You've given us information. I've given you information so that we can continue to make sure that our families stay abreast of not only making sure there's enough food in the home, but now internet in the home, so that if by chance they have to do virtual school, they can do virtual school.
Yes. Thank you for that information.
Well, thank you for being on. Thank you for spending this time with us. I'm sure it's not the last time we'll see you. You have a great summer.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. So, nobody's safe from me. I'm an advocate for our parents, an advocate for our students, and making sure that everybody understands that they are also advocates and need to become advocates for our families as well in any way that we can. So I was out this morning, earlier in the week, talking about an article that caught my eye, and I liked it so much that I'm bringing it here as well, counting on the fact that I have a different audience for the most part, but I just really, really wanted to talk more about the fact that our COVID years, because it may have been 1 year and 2 months, but it's impacted 2 school years so far. And that is that we have gaps. We had academic gaps before COVID hit, and that increased our gaps, our COVID slide. But now we want to climb out of that. But we need to do it based on data. So I saw an article that said the latest science scores are out, and the news isn't good for schools. And if the news isn't good for schools, of course, it's not good for children either. So let's talk a little bit about our science scores and maybe a little bit about what we can do about that. Fewer than 1 in 4 high schoolers and a little bit more than a third of 4th and 8th graders performed proficiently in science in 2019, according to a national test result this week. The results are the latest from the National Assessment of Education Progress in Science. That's called the NAEP, N-A-E-P. It's a test that is given every 4 years, and it helps us know how we compare to other kids of that same grade level in other states. And actually, we use the NAEP also in an international way to compare to other kids in other countries. Since the assessment, known as the Nation's Report Card, was given last in science in 2015, 4th graders' performance has declined overall, while average scores have been flat for students in 8th and 12th grade. The 4th grade scores are concerning, said Peggy Carr, the Associate Commissioner for the National Center for Educational Statistics, which administers the NAEP. Whether we're looking at average scores or the performance by percentiles, it's clear that many students are struggling with science. So you're saying, well, you're comparing 2015 to 2019. Well, yes, and then COVID hit. So already the students were struggling with science. And so our antenna should be very alert to the fact that we didn't have any science miracles happen. Matter of fact, we had a lot of what we call fuzzy science going on now, right? Not only fuzzy science has joined fuzzy math in this COVID time period that we've been in. So we should be very concerned about the fact that it was already bad before COVID, and now we've had these academic hits. So what are we going to do about it? The thing that we need to acknowledge as educators and parents is that we have to continue to work at making our instructional life, along with our life at home, sort of academically relevant. That is the way that we engage kids, and we work really hard in the schools to do that. And we've had to get even better at it when we do it from a virtual standpoint, right? But now our science scores are telling us that we need to really pick up the gauntlet at home and at school. So how do we do that? Well, since summer's coming, let's talk from a summer standpoint. I know the schools are doing summer school. Many schools are doing fun, academically fun science and math camps, and that's fantastic, but it can't end there. The parents have got to help us support that work that the schools are doing. And so how can parents do that? Well, one of the things that parents can do is to ask their kids what they learned that day. And it's really important that kids get used to having to answer that question. And it maybe if you're starting a little bit late, if you're starting with a 4th or a 5th grader or 7th grader, they're going to be more reluctant at first to give you answers, but over time, if you're consistent about it, then you can get them used to responding to you. And so you say, well, why should I do that? Well, you should do that from a couple of standpoints. One is so that you can support what they're learning, especially if they're learning things in social studies, which we can apply to current events, possibly science, which there's so much of our life is science bound and can be applied through scientific lens. But of course, math is a type of science. Technology is a type of science. So how can parents support the work that the schools are doing? And the second thing, create that deeper relationship with our kids at the same time. We talked a lot during the COVID time, during the podcast, about the opportunity that parents got to have the family back together because of the forced closure of school and work. Families were eating at the dinner table every night together. Families were going on walks together after dinner. They had family game nights, which some parents have never done that before. And now it's part of the family culture and tradition. So yay. But if we want to have tough conversations with kids, and tough conversations might be around dating, about sex, about whether the boyfriend or girlfriend maybe is an appropriate mix or match. All of those sort of tough relationship talks are really hard to do if you haven't built the relationship with your child ahead of time. So here are opportunities to do it in fun ways. And those are foundational pieces and opportunities so that when you do want to talk about some tougher conversations, the child will not shut down on you as quickly or will allow you more conversational permission than if you hadn't built that relationship ahead of time. So let's talk about how you do that, right? So no matter what the age, our kids want to eat. And this summer's they're going to want to eat more. And so one of the things that I would suggest is that we get with our kids and we talk about summer snacking and maybe how the kids are going to help us find meals and prep for meals and help us shop for meals and all of that. Those are all things we've talked about before, but they bear saying again because of the opportunity that you all have of bringing in the science behind all of this needed structure in the home of talking about what we want to eat next week. Then we make a list of the meals. We find recipes that go with those meals. We then make a shopping list that goes with those meals. We then look for coupons at our favorite grocery stores that we can go online and look for coupons for those foods that are on our shopping list. And we might even do some nutritional value. We don't have to do it all the time, parents. It might get too bogged down, but introduce the concept of the nutritional value to our kids on a regular enough basis so that they understand the concept and then they get to the point where they can make those trade-offs. Wouldn't it be great if we have kids that learn to say, we can only have dessert once a week. So what kind of meal are we going to serve on dessert night? Because we don't want our meal to be too calorie high. We want it to be a lighter calorie meal so that when we have our great dessert, we know that we can work it off pretty easily. And then there's that physical piece that goes with it, that how many calories do we need to burn off our meals, right? See, all of that is science, it's math, and it's just an opportunity to have our kids be part of a life skill process in our homes to prepare them for life after us, right? After they leave our homes. And so the many, many relevant threads that are brought in by these opportunities to have our kids taking part in the everyday piece of planning, prepping, shopping, and cooking and serving food is huge and really can make kids and families bond together as a team better. Again, as that foundational piece to when you need to have tough conversations about why you can't stay out late, why that group of kids may not be the group of kids you should be hanging around with. All of those tough conversations, but not as tough if you've built that trust ahead of time. So, let me mention one of my other favorite things also is making sure they do chores. And if you want to go ahead and assign a monetary value to chores, some parents do, some parents don't. There's research that says it's not good. There's research that says it can be done, but it has to be done carefully. But if, let's say, we assign that our kids, depending on the age, let's say that we have young children and they can earn $1 every week when X amount of chores are done consistently, and then they save their money so that 4 or 5 weeks down the road, they can buy something at the store with it. And so all of those life skills of saving money, anticipating things, not getting what we want immediately, all of that, those are parenting skills that we should be doing. And some of us do them really, really well. And some of us get so busy that sometimes we forget. And so this is a reminder that that's part of making sure our kids grow up so that they get off the family payroll sooner rather than later, folks. It behooves you. You put the work up front and they will get off the family payroll a whole lot sooner than if you don't put the work up front. Trust me. I hear from parents all the time. And so if you want to know more, on the Ask Dr. Be Good, you can email me. You can ask me for research around that. You can ask me for more information about how to do that well, the financial literacy, chores. And by the way, kids who do chores grow up to be less problematic adults. They tend to get in less trouble and so forth. The research is out there because they've learned to be structured. They've learned to follow through on what the family needed for them to do and what the child agreed to do. All of those things leads to a more productive citizen. So again, do the work up front and they'll get off the family payroll a lot sooner than if you didn't put in that work. And so my last thing to chat with you all about is another thing that caught my eye because it's so true. And that is, parents, we need to stop talking about the lost year. Teenagers and tweens will be fine if adults model resilience. So here's, again, we're putting it on you folks, but if we put it on you and you model resilience, your children will become those resilient teenagers and young adults that we need for them to be. So a lot of people are calling this past year the lost year, a lot of griping, a lot of moaning. And what we need to understand is that virtually everyone has gone through hardships during the past year, job losses, relationship struggles, chronic stress, and worst of all, losses of loved ones due to COVID. So, we had parents who had to combine work from home with school from home, but mothers and fathers of middle schoolers, the parenting cohort long known to researchers as the most angst-ridden and unhappy age level, are connecting now in a specific sort of common misery, the pressing fear that their children at a vital inflection point in their academic and social life have tripped over some key development milestones and may never quite find their footing again. So let's see what you can do to make sure that we can make up for some of that lost time. Experts say that some of the worries are justified, but only up to a point. There's no doubt that the pandemic has taken on a major toll on many adolescents' emotional well-being. According to a much-cited report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the proportion of emergency room visits that were mental health related for 12 and 17-year-olds increased by 31% from April to October of last year, compared to the same period the year before. And there's no question that witnessing their loneliness, difficulties with online learning, and seemingly endless hours on social media has been enormously stressful for the adults who care about these kids, right? So as the nation begins to pivot from this trauma and this traumatic year, many mental health experts and educators are trying to spread the message that parents too need to reset. If adults want to guide their children towards resilience, these experts say they need to get their own minds out of crisis mode. That challenge is likely to be especially tough for parents of young adolescents whose emotions run high and whose ability to put feelings into words tend to be limited. But it's also one that parents at middle schoolers in particular really need to try to meet. We need to get parent minds out of crisis mode. Early adolescence, the middle school years in the United States, is considered a critical, the second critical period of when the brain changes. And we talked a lot about brain changes, and again, making sure all this brain information stays here instead of slipping to the back. So a time that brain change is so rapid and far-reaching that they rival the plasticity and growth that takes place in the much more popularly recognized newborn to 3-year-old period. These changes, which are set in motion by the same sex hormones that prompt the external physical developments of puberty, make children more capable of higher level learning and thinking and reasoning. They make them actually acutely aware of their status and how they appear in the eyes of others. It makes them crave social contact, attention, and approval. Overall, they provide a hardwired explanation for the challenges and opportunities that are most associated with the middle school years. Remote learning and social distancing in many ways opposite of what the children in this age group want and need. It's been the hardest for the middle schoolers, said Ferris Fagel, a therapist, school counselor, and author of the book Middle School Matters. It is their job to pull away from parents to use these years to really focus on figuring out where they are in the pecking order, figuring out what they need from a friend and what they can give a friend. And all of that hard work has to happen in these years, and that has to happen in these years, was put on hold during the pandemic. As a result, there's more perfectionism because they're trying to control the variables that they can control. There's more anxiety, more school refusal, more aggression, chronic worrying, germophobia, depression, and there's just more of everything, she said. Despite all of this, said Ms. Fagel, much like dozens plus other experts in adolescent development who were interviewed for this article, they were adamant that parents should not panic, and that furthermore, the spread of the lost year, that narrative needs to stop. Getting a full picture of what's going on with middle schoolers and being ready to help them, they agree, requires holding two seemingly contradictory ideas simultaneously in your mind. The past year was terrible, and most middle schoolers will be fine. You need to keep that in mind, right? They reason that they will be fine because the fact that middle schoolers are going through this critical period of heightened brain flexibility, instability, plasticity means that they are hypersensitive and ultra vulnerable and also extra primed for adaptability and resilience. Do kids need certain experiences at this point in their lives in order to develop normally? Yes, but there's no reason to think that an interruption like this is going to cause permanent damage, said Dr. Steinberg, who is professor of psychology at Temple University and author of Age of Opportunity. The plasticity afforded by the adolescent brain at this age allows for recovery. What factors keep adolescents from tipping from one state to the other? Mental health experts point to a few: their connection to at least one good friend, any underlying vulnerabilities like mood disorders, the adversity in their daily lives, the availability of adults to help them cope with the hardships, and whether their parents are keeping it together. This often overlooked variable has repeatedly emerged as one of the most critical determinants of middle and high school mental health during the pandemic, according to surveys conducted and analyzed by psychologist Sonia Luther, a professor emeritus of Teacher College in Columbia University and co-founder of the research group Authentic Connections, which advises schools on promoting students' mental well-being. What they've found is that children's perceptions that their parents are dissatisfied with them, as when parents point out all the ways that their children are falling behind, along with poor parent mood, are the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety in teenagers. The effects are strong, Dr. Luther suggested in an interview, because during the pandemic, adolescents are getting an unadulterated dose of parent distress. The safety net that we had, the safety nets we could have had if you had a difficult parent, teacher, sports, it's all taken away in one fell swoop. Parents can't just take a magic wand and sweep away their own mental health woes, but they can still help their children come out of this period feeling whole. They just have to be smarter about the way that they communicate. Painting this last year as a crucible of loss, for example, can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. We need to focus not just on hardships and tragedy, we need to praise them for their flexibility and resilience and their ability to change. It's not just a matter of a pat on the back. How we tell ourselves the story of ourselves, particularly after high-impact emotional experiences, and especially in the critical period of early adolescence, is actually etched in our brains, explains Dr. Prinstein, author of the 2017 book Popular. That's why he said we need to link this period to praise about how our kids were able to develop adaptive skills to give them a positive sense of self. So, if you've been a parent who's been sort of bemoaning this lost year, I think we're hearing that you need to try to turn that around, okay? So, and let me stress that if that's too hard to do naturally, seek out help. We're still in May, mental health. We're in the last couple of days of May, but it's still Mental Health Month, and there are extra resources out there to help adults because, as you've heard me say many times on the show, you have to deal with your issues so that you can help your kids deal with theirs. A mentally struggling parent will find it very, very difficult to help their adolescents, their teenagers cope well with what they're going through. So please, please, please give yourselves permission to seek out the many mental health resources that are available to you. If you need reminders, you can go to your region service centers for school districts. They have free resources. You can go to your doctors. You can go to, if you're employed, your employee assistance programs oftentimes have free sessions. I will tell you that I was not happy, and I didn't know about this till COVID, but I was not happy with our district's EAP program when I found out that we only had 3 free sessions. And so now for the new school year, we're changing that, and we now get 5 free sessions. And so, folks, there are opportunities to start getting mentally healthy. Just you need to reach out, and you need to give yourselves permission to do that as the adults so that you can model that for your kids. Well, we've reached that time where we are at the end of our hour, but I want to thank you for being on today. I hope that you left a little bit more educated in the things that are happening with public education, and that that you have an opportunity to voice some concerns. You wrote your questions in the chat so that we can answer them for you. Remember, I am available if you have a concern at school, if you've got concerns with your teachers that aren't being properly addressed in your mind. I can give you the words. I can sometimes give you the law around why the school maybe needs to listen to you in a different way. But as always, reach out to me. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay socially distanced, wash your hands, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone.